Hi, my name is Fred Welsh, and I'm the author of Welsh's Synthesizer Cookbook. Today we're going to program some of the patches from the cookbook into a Bass Station 2. If you're not familiar with the Synthesizer Cookbook, it has a selection of patches that are based on harmonic analysis. We'll be programming 3 sounds, and I'll put multi-samples of each one of the sounds at the end of the video if you'd like to load them into your sampler for use in your own music. We'll be programming a didgeridoo and a violin sound, both of which were created by matching the harmonic output of standard dual oscillator subtractive synthesis waveforms with the harmonics of the acoustic sources. But first, let's program a bass patch. Since we're working with a British bass synth, I felt that it was fitting that we program a bass sound from a famous British sci-fi show. To create this patch, I looked at the source material and a harmonic analyzer to figure out how it could be recreated. The results are shown here. In this patch, we're going to be using both oscillators, and each one's going to be set to a pulse width of 30%. And you can see that oscillator 1 is going to be tuned an octave lower than oscillator 2. We're not going to do anything with the LFO, and we're going to set our low-pass filter to 10%. It's going to nearly be closed. And we're going to give it an envelope amount of 85%. Okay, we've set up an initialized patch. Set the pulse width to 30%. Now we're going to do the same on oscillator 2. Set the filter to a 12 decibel low pass. Now we're going to set our envelope amounts. They're going to be all fairly short. Okay, still a little long. I dropped the keyboard an octave. Okay, for our next patch, we're going to recreate the sound of a didgeridoo. And here we're going to set oscillator 1 to a square wave. We're going to set it down an octave, and we're going to turn the amplitude all the way up. And for oscillator 2, we're going to set that to a pulse width of 25%, and we're going to tune it 9 semitones higher. So it'll actually be an octave and 9 semitones higher than oscillator 1. But it won't be out of tune because we're going to turn on oscillator syncing. So we're going to sync oscillator 2 to oscillator 1, so that whenever the waveform of oscillator 1 restarts, it'll cause the waveform of oscillator 2 to restart. And that's going to give it a much richer harmonic texture than just even like a simple pulse width. Then over on the filter, we're going to set the cutoff to about halfway off, in either case of either a 24 decibel or 12 decibel filter. But the key here is that we're going to turn the resonance up to 80%, and that's where a lot of the sound of this patch comes from. You see, we do nothing with the envelope, but But what we're going to do is we're going to modulate the cutoff with the LFO. But I'm also going to show you that we'll just modulate it by hand. It'll give us a little bit more control. And notice over on the LFO that we're going to be routing the LFO to the filter cutoff. It's going to have a pretty slow frequency and not much depth, but it will have a pretty noticeable impact on the sound. Again, we're going to go to an initialized patch. Set oscillator 1 up as a square. Now we're going to go work on oscillator 2, and we're going to adjust the pulse width down to 25%. And what I'm doing here is I'm turning oscillator syncing on. And as we change the tuning of oscillator 2, you can hear the harmonic structure change. Setting the resonance up to about 80%. Alright, we're getting kind of a didgeridoo sound. It's a little too high though, so we drop the octave. Sounds pretty good. Now we're gonna try and modulate it with the LFO. Slow it down a little bit. That sounds pretty good. I prefer actually doing it by hand rather than using the LFO, but you can certainly set it up that way if you prefer. The last sound we're going to make is a violin, and for this one, we're actually going to have oscillator 1 turned all the way down. Now, if you're using a synthesizer where you're able to turn the oscillators on and off, you'd want oscillator 1 on, but you don't want to be able to hear it. We just need to have it present because we're going to sync oscillator 2 to it. So oscillator 1 can be set up with any waveform and turn the volume all the way down. But for oscillator 2, we're going to set that to a sawtooth, and we're going to tune it up by 6 semitones, keep it fully in the mix, and we're going to turn the oscillator syncing on. And over on the low pass filter, we're going to set the cutoff to about the 2/3 position, and we're not going to have any resonance or envelope control. And to give this sound some movement, we're going to use the LFO to modulate the pitch of oscillator 2. Well, actually, we won't be modulating the pitch. We'll be routing it to the pitch, but since oscillator 2 is synced to oscillator 1, what the LFO will really be doing is it'll be modulating the harmonic content, okay? You'll hear it in just a second. So we turn oscillator 1 all the way down. Oscillator 2 is all the way up. And I'm going to turn on the syncing. There, it's on. Now we change the tuning of oscillator 2. I'm still on oscillator 1. Have to switch it to oscillator 2. There we go. Now we change the tuning. And and notice how the sound changes. But it's too bright for a violin sound, so we're gonna bring the cutoff down on the filter. Slow down the attack on the amplitude envelope. Not by much. Just make it a little less percussive. Doesn't sound like a violin much at all yet. We're going to apply a little bit of LFO. Just a bit. There we go. And that's how you do a violin on an analog synth. The cookbook has 3 parts. The first section explains the parts of an analog synth, such as the oscillators, filters, envelopes, and LFOs, using lots of illustrations to show exactly what is going on harmonically with the sound. The second part of the book explains how to perform synthesis using harmonic analysis and reverse engineering. This section explains in detail how to reverse engineer patches from other synths and sounds from existing songs, as well as how to emulate acoustic instruments. The third part of the book is a selection of patches that will work on any dual oscillator analog synth. This set of patches were created by analyzing the harmonics and envelopes of various instruments and then determining the optimal selection of waveforms and envelopes to reproduce the harmonic spectra. Every major Western instrument is emulated, as well as world instruments, standard synth leads, basses, pads, and sound effects. There is also a second volume, which is a collection of harmonic graphs that is intended as a supplement to the first book. Both of these are available over on Amazon and eBay. If you buy both books, the second one ships free. If you're located outside of the US, I offer international shipping over on eBay, but not on Amazon at this time. Links to Amazon and eBay are in the description, as well as a link to a sample PDF. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments section.